Hey everyone, it is me, Dan here making a video that I'm pretty sure not a lot of you will have expected me to ever make, because this is a show that I've never really talked about on this channel before. I think I made one video on it back in 2017 and that was it. Maybe even earlier than that, but it is Supergirl. And the main reason for that is that I recently finished watching season 5 of the show. It was a season that just perplexed me so much that I had to make a video for it. Now, this isn't necessarily going to be a review for me personally, because there's very little positive I can say about this season of the show. This is more of a discussion of why I personally feel that Supergirl Season 5 did not work as a season, and for me is one of the worst seasons of the entire show as a whole. Of course, spoilers for Season 5. If you have not seen it, don't click any further in this video. Please click off, because you will have the whole season spoiled for you. I think the main thing that I just did not like about this season was the whole Leviathan storyline. I did not understand it at all. What was the storyline? What was their motivation? It was never made clear at all. Now, people have tried to say that they were trying to be very subtle about it, and that would have worked had they actually bothered to leave tidbits of information for us as an audience to try and come up with our own conclusions as to what their motivations were. But it was so muddled that it just stopped being fun. There was no fun to it. It just became frustrating because of a lack of answers we were getting to them. And then by the time we get a semblance of what their plan was, we're in the season finale, where they're having to basically have these massive action sequences to obviously conclude the season, juxtaposed with so much exposition because they couldn't be bothered to explain Leviathan's plan in prior episodes to spread it out evenly and improve the pacing. It was just pathetic, and easily one of my least favourite antagonists in Supergirl. Honestly, I never thought we would be having villains on the same level as Lena Luthor and Rhea, but somehow we went down there, guys. We went way worse than that with Leviathan. I just did not like the storyline throughout the whole season. Again, if your characters don't have a motivation, I stop caring about them as villains. They just become boring to me, and that's exactly what Leviathan was. It was just a boring long wait for motivation that just, in my opinion, felt incredibly rushed. Speaking about things that made no sense and had no explanation, Lex's plan throughout the whole season. What the actual fuck was he doing? What was his game plan? Because even after the finale, I still don't know anything about this. I still have no idea what his plan was. Again, I understand that obviously they couldn't film all of their season finale, which I can understand why that affected the season, but still, I should have at least have some semblance of what his plan was, and I have bits of it. I can understand a little bit of it, but not the whole thing. It feels very muddled to me, and it's a shame because I love Lex as a character. And originally, I was liking this direction they were taking him as to, you know, how he was going about stopping Leviathan or backstabbing them. But for me, there's only so much that intrigue can last when you're not bothering to explain anything to the audience, and that was basically what happened. And again, that was just another storyline that for me, they basically tried to think that the audience would be fine going into it because, oh, it's Lex. But the fact that they weren't giving us any real meaty information about it, it just became very frustrating in the long haul, much like the Leviathan storyline. I also don't like what they did with Lena, trying to turn her into a villain, having her be basically just going against what she was throughout the past 3 seasons, because what I liked the most about Lena was that she was the good Luthor, and it really helped to separate her as a character from Lena Luthor and from Lex Luthor, and it was what made her, in my opinion, such a great character. But in this season, obviously off the back end of season 4, when she finds out that Kara is Supergirl, I just don't like what they did with her. They just, for me, they made her such a very one-dimensional villain, and I don't think they wrote her with enough complexity for me to like the fact that she turned into an antagonist. Because her being a villain, I wasn't a fan of anyway, but I was open to them maybe giving us a good, solid reasoning to care about Lena and why she feels the way she does, but I didn't really feel that throughout the season, and for me, it wasn't really till the last few episodes where I felt like she kind of got back to how she was in seasons 2 to 4. So for me, I just didn't like Lena this season and what they did with her, and it was easily one of the worst points of this whole season. There's also some episodes in here which I just think are utterly terrible. The first 5 episodes of this season are dreadful. Episode 5, obviously, was the one that was very famously covered by Corridor Crew for the god-awful CGI. At that point, I actually stopped watching Supergirl for quite a good while, because after I got to that episode, I was just like, oh, I can't do this. And then eventually, a couple of months ago, I finally got back into slowly, and I mean slowly, watching the rest of the season, and it didn't really improve from there. I really wasn't a fan of the 100th episode. The way it was structured, of them literally watching tapes of past seasons and different scenarios playing out, just not my style. When you compare it to the other 100th episodes we've had in The Flash and Arrow, it just paled in comparison. It was not a good episode at all, and I didn't really care for it. There was a lot of characters as well in this season that I just didn't really care for that much, and I felt were a little bit wasted. I felt like John didn't really do a lot this season. I wasn't really that invested in his storylines. Nia as well was a character that I quite enjoyed in season 4, but in this season I was just very indifferent to. I felt like some of the decisions that she made throughout the season I just wasn't particularly on board with. Alex is alright for this season, but we got to talk about that costume she gets in the finale. That is fucking atrocious. And the fact that they've now basically destroyed the DEO and she's now going to act as a vigilante, I'm very mixed on that storyline because, one, the costume she's wearing looks god-awful, so again, please change that for Season 6. But also because I just don't have faith in these writers to write her properly as a good vigilante, because they've never done it in the past. They obviously tried to make James the Guardian in Season 2 and the seasons after that, but it never really worked. And so because of that, I'm very mixed as to her becoming a vigilante. I think it could be an interesting step, but I just don't have confidence in the writers to write it in a compelling way. The CGI in the season that I mentioned beforehand was just awful. Awful this season. I know the CGI has not been good since Season 1, because obviously Season 1 was the CBS, they had a higher budget. This season the CGI is atrocious. Like I say, Episode 5 is the prime example. The CGI in that is honestly tragic. It's some of the worst CGI I've ever seen in a superhero show in recent memory. It's just not acceptable. I mean, how they think that is passable is crazy. And lastly, I do want to talk about the relationship between Kara and William that they introduced in this season. Now, I don't love this relationship, but I also don't hate it. I'm very indifferent to it. Whilst I do like the idea of Kara opening up more to someone and trying to look for a relationship post 1L, at the same time, I'm not the biggest fan of William as a character. I think he's not really someone that I look at and think, yeah, I can imagine these two being together. It just doesn't really feel very natural to me. Now, I will say that the abuse that the actor who plays William has been getting online is completely unacceptable. The whole toxicity around the relationship is just wrong completely. I might not be a fan of the relationship, but to then go ahead and criticize the actors online, shameful. But this relationship, I just didn't really care all that much about it, but I am open to seeing whether they can maybe write it better in the next season. Maybe I can buy the link in the chemistry between these two characters, because I think the actors have alright chemistry, but for me, when I compare it to how the chemistry between Kara and Mon-El, for me, there was just far more there, and they felt like a far more logical couple. But I'm willing to see if they can maybe potentially get this relationship into first gear and actually make it work, but at the moment, I'm not all that convinced. So yeah, as you can probably tell from this actually quite calm little rant about Supergirl Season 5, I wasn't a big fan of this season. I didn't particularly enjoy it. There were some few things that I did like. I liked Alex throughout most of the season. I liked Brainy. I liked Lex. I think certain characters were good, but it was, for me, the story and the plot of this season which just completely buried it in the sand. For me, this is, like I said earlier, the second worst season of Supergirl, and it's an utter shame because I think there were things about this season that could have really worked. But for me, they just kind of threw them all away and just really went about it without any real explanation to the audience. I'm sure the Supergirl writers knew exactly what they were doing the whole time and what the story of this season was. But in my opinion, they just did a really poor job of conveying it to the audience, and as a result, I just felt so utterly lost while watching this season. So thank you all very much for watching my little rant video on Supergirl Season 5. Of course, I don't really talk about the show all that much, but for me, like I say, this season was just, I had so many frustrations with it that I simply had to make a video for it. Of course, let me know in the comment section down below what you think of this season of Supergirl, and more curiously, how would you rank the seasons of Supergirl? For me, it would probably be Season 1 at the bottom, Season 5, then Season 2, Season 3, and then Season 4 at the top. I want to thank you very much for watching. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll hope to see you all again next time.